I'm Karen Kala, licensed marriage and family therapist of Insights Counseling Center. This is part 3 of my 4-part series that I'm doing on EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and work performance enhancement. Part 3, today I'm going to be talking about the mechanics of EMDR. So in the previous 2 parts I've talked about trauma and the memory networks. And so how does EMDR actually work? EMDR is really a comprehensive mind-body-spirit approach to working with people. And as I talked about last time, is that when we have traumatic events that occurs, the event gets frozen in the brain with all the sights, the sounds, the smells, the physical sensations we had, the emotions that we had, and how we interpreted the situation. So those are all the things that we address in EMDR. We start out with a specific event, and that's this part here, and then we want to find out what is the image that represents the worst part of that particular incident. Then we find out, we want to know what is the negative cognition that goes with that particular event. How, when you bring that memory and that image, what negative belief do you have about yourself? It might be that I'm a bad person, I'm unlovable, I'm not safe, anything like that. Then we want to, because this is an adaptive information processing system, so those are, obviously that type of belief is not, it's not an adaptive way to work, to live your life. What would you rather like to believe about yourself? That I'm a good person, that I'm lovable, that I'm capable of making better choices, are some examples. Then we have some measurements, because we want to find out, okay, well, how true does that positive cognition feel to you now when you bring up that image and event? And then also we want to find out, how disturbing is that event to you now when you bring it up? Then we find out, well, what kind of emotion does this bring up? And where in your body do you feel it? Because what we want to do is we want to go down through each of these channels here and flush them out, to where it does not cause any disturbance anymore. And at that point, when we get to where in your body do you feel it, we tell people to focus on this. And then we add bilateral stimulation. The bilateral stimulation can be visual, with eye movements going from side to side. It could be tactile, with tapping, or it can be auditory. And I have a little device that I use, and it provides both the auditory stimulation with the headphones. Put those on, and there's a tone when I turn it on that goes from one side to the other. And then it also has these little paddles that just vibrate very lightly, and you hold them in your hand, and the vibration goes from one side to the other. What the bilateral stimulation does, and this really is the key part of EMDR, is that it does a couple of things. One, it helps relax the body, so that as we're going back to kind of revisit briefly this negative event, is that it's being paired with a relaxed body state. Doesn't mean that you're not going to necessarily have very powerful emotions and thoughts and feelings and sensations, physical sensations even, but people quickly, depending on how severe the situation is, of course, but will often quickly get through that and get to a more calm and relaxed state. The other part that bilateral stimulation does is that it really accesses that adaptive information processing part of the brain, because it helps the two brain halves communicate with each other, as well as the amygdala, which is sending out the fight, flight, or freeze stimulation, with the frontal cortex, which is better able to see, oh, well, the fact that I'm doing this presentation is not really a life-threatening situation. So, so that it's not necessary to send out those life-threatening messages. So that's kind of what that does. I'm going to use a real-life experience that I had with with a particular client that I had recently. He came to see me a few months ago, and he came because he was getting ready to go off on this 4-day training, and had the weight of the world on his shoulders because he was just in general feeling really poorly about himself. He felt like this going off on this event here was a make it or break it situation for him. He'd spent a lot of time and money on his education and this business, and in the past he'd had incredible success in businesses. Now at this particular point in time in his life, you know, his business was doing okay, but he was kind of struggling a little bit. Had also gone through a divorce, which had been a very long, very toxic relationship. So again, there were many memories, traumatic events that had not been stored properly, that were bringing up all this, and were leading to this blocking self-belief that I'm a loser. That was one of the negative cognition that he brought up when he zeroed in on a specific event. And the specific event that had to do, even though the reason why he came to me was because he was going off on a conference, this negative event that it triggered was a negative situation that had happened, a very toxic conversation he had with his ex-wife recently. So we went through this process with this situation, and when he left after the one hour session that we had, he left feeling very excited and was definitely had the weight of the world lifted off of his shoulders. He floated out of my office, and he called me a couple weeks later after he'd been to the conference, and told me that not only had he been super excited about going, he'd been able to really focus and listen and take in all the information that was given at the conference, but also, and he'd also completely wiped away the whole idea that this was a make it or break it situation for him. He said the secondary benefit of our one session was that that before, when his ex-wife would call him and really tear into him, he would really feel badly about himself for 2-3 days later. Now, because what we did was we went back into this memory and flushed out all of those channels here, now it's stored properly, is now when she calls and really tears into him, it doesn't bother him at all. It just rolls right off him because he knows it has nothing to do with him. And so that's just, and oftentimes we can get through different events fairly quickly. It just kind of depends. In 1 and 2 sessions, we can oftentimes get through a single incident. If it's more complex, long-term PTSD, oftentimes it takes longer time, and sometimes it's not a matter of just clearing out one event. Sometimes we have to clear out several events in order to really start feeling the benefits in the here and now. But that is essentially how EMDR works. And in part 4, I'm going to be talking about the mindset of excellence and how we use EMDR to help increase work performance enhancement. So till then, take care. Thank you.